Okay, now when we're sharpening, like I said before, I don't use too much in the way of jigs. I do use some supports, I'll admit. This being one. This one I can adjust, and I'm going to approximate what my blade is already. If it looks like it's getting too shallow or it's getting too long, I'll go ahead and twist it up and down. And one of the things I want to illustrate is the color. And I don't think the camera can pick this up, but this one is very coarse. A 60 to 80 grit is about what you want. Most of these grinders will come with a gray wheel. Throw it out. That's about all it's good for. The problem being is very fine, so it doesn't take off a whole lot of metal at a time. And two, it's so hard, you end up building a very thin layer of metal, and the abrasives in it also get rounded off. So again, all you're going to do is produce a lot of heat. You'll take off a little bit of metal, but the biggest problem is you're going to heat it up. If your tool starts changing color, you've just heat treated it or annealed it, made it softer. And of course, when you anneal it, that means it's softer. You can never get the same edges you could before, and two, it won't hold it as long as the original one was. One of my rules of thumb, whenever I'm going on this, I can take my tool and always hold it against the palm of my hand. You can see there's quite a bit of buildup on this wheel. So what you want to do is, of course, hold it off, and this also will square the wheel as you go along. This has a bunch of little tiny diamonds on it, and that's better than the single one, because the single one you have to very carefully scrape it across the surface of your wheel. And I'm sorry, I always have a little jiggle someplace. I never could get it straight. And with this kind of a frosted and all these diamonds, presses it in a hurry. I use a Japanese water stone. And what I've done is a real high-tech holder. The mat here is what you use sometimes in a toolbox. My wife uses it to put underneath the dishes so they don't clatter. And you can see the size of it. And this is the stone. This holds the stone, the rubber, and kind of keeps my desk a little bit cleaner. It does take some getting used to, is to feel where this thing finally bottoms out. This is a 1000 grit, this is a 6000 grit. And being a Japanese water stone, you want to develop a slurry. And it's the slurry that helps you cut. And this is fantastically fast. So what you're going to do is go back and forth until you'll feel it kind of catch, and you'll end up with all the surfaces, and go back and forth. And if you can possibly do it and you have the coordination, try to do a figure eight. The idea being so you keep the wear on your stone even. And when you set it down and you want to you lock your elbows to your side, and you want to go from your knees. Back and forth, and what you're doing is you're holding your elbows and your arms at the same level. And another neat thing, my wife really appreciates it when I wear an apron, because I'll get distracted and I'll end up doing this. And when it's my shirt, boy does she get fussy. I can get this a lot sharper. So what I do is I use a polishing wheel. With this white wheel, I turn down the speed to the minimum, and it's about 1700 RPM. Mostly that just helps with the friction, and it keeps the tool a little cooler. You can use abrasives. Recently, I've come to the conclusion there's a white colored one. It works a little bit better. And also don't be sparing. All you're going to do is just sit here a little longer, going back and forth. Don't be afraid. Put it on. Slow this thing down so you're not spraying this wax all over the place. And crank it up when you want to use it. Now what's interesting is every once in a while you run across something new. And for 40 years I've been very carefully going like this to sharpen things. because the wheel is turning this direction. So of course, down here. And I'm always having to, carrying on like that. It's a real pain. Well, I saw a guy recently at a wood show. And this is when you kind of go, gee whiz, I wish I had thought of it. Go like that. And all of a sudden it's right in your face. And eventually what you'll notice, right along the top of this, a little bit of the wax will start bleeding over your edge. As I'm watching this little liquid line go all the way across the top, you'll learn to judge just how much there should be, and you'll very quickly get this to really, really sharp. Now, how do you tell what's sharp and what's not? Oh, sure, the old test of shaving, and I think some people even come across and see what they can do with their fingernail. Like I said before, when it's too dull to cut the wood properly, you can still do all that. Well, the way you do it, just hold it up and scrape skin across it. The wider something is, the first few times, the easier it's going to be. What you want to do is feel how much drag there is. And there's a difference in the type of drag on two sides. When you feel this, and this is just naturally occurring, you'll notice the difference. The more drag and the sharper it feels, relating to that drag will tell you this is the sharper side, so I need to go polish this side a little more. And keep going back and forth, and you'll notice all of a sudden both sides are about the same. Now, one of the things I mentioned before was the importance of how flat the bottom is here. It's very tempting to sit here, turn this flat bottom, and just briefly run across the polishing wheel. Well, that's going to cause you more grief down the road than, well, it's going to cause trouble. If it's flat, it has to be super, super flat. The least little bevel will start forcing this to climb out of your cut, and that's not what you want to do. You're the one supposed to be in control. So keep this bottom flat. And quite often, when you're polishing, you'll end up with a wire edge. Sit down your stone on the back, and this is actually one where you can leave it on this slightly coarser stone. Just take a couple of strokes. You can do the same thing with the chisel. Again, go back and forth, feel it, and come back here. And be careful not to set the chisel on your stone this way. Try to do it that way for obvious reasons. A couple of strokes. And yes, we got it sharp again. That's really all there is to sharpening. Especially flat. Now, what do I do with something that's round? Well, this obviously is very flat across the front, and I do try to do that. Some of these, the larger, because I'm mostly cutting here in the middle, I want to be able to control where these wings actually cut into the wood, so that if I'm cutting like this, I want all the way around my chip. I want to be the one in control, saying where it's getting cut. So, how do I run this on the grinder? Let me show you. Okay, again, with something flat like this, you can set your bevel like this and just go back and forth. It's pretty cut and dried, normal way of doing it. Kind of keep an idea that this is square to the sides, then you'll be okay. Skip the stone, just go straight to polish. And this one you can actually do it somewhat sideways. And you'll end up with the surface like this. It's oddly enough, it's so rare that I ever have to put this on the grinder. I'm trying to recall the last time I really did it. Now, one of the big problems with a gouge, of course, is the inside. You will develop a tiny wire. So you can use something like this Arkansas stone. Sit it on the inside, and remember always this side first, then lay it down, and you can go back and forth, and it will gently remove it. And someone would think this is a diamond, but you can do the same thing. Back and forth. And this does a couple of things. First, it gets rid of the wire, and also it keeps this side flat. It's kind of the what you're trying to do with the flat chisels. You want this so you can control it, because this is where your chip's going to come up on. Now, if we have a much smaller one, and let me go get one of my ones with a thumbnail. I'll show it to you. Okay, this is what you call a thumbnail. And this is very particular because I don't really use the point of this. I'm only using the sides. Here is curved. And again, this is usually just for a thin shaving. And as I'm cutting in, it'll be in this direction or in this direction. And if you're ambidextrous, it really comes in handy. Otherwise, you'll notice you'll get a lot more wear on one side. Whenever you go to sharpening, just try to keep it even. And again, when you're sharpening, you go in a circle all the way around, and you want to watch for the development of that shiny little bit of wax bead that will show up on the edge as you're going around. Now here you also will develop a wire from time to time. This one you can go on the inside because of the shape of the shavings that we actually use this for. So it's okay to use this. If you notice you're using it an awful lot, switch and do the same thing here. Remember, set the point down up here, go back and forth, and you'll have a very sharp. Oh, and in case somebody was wondering, big chisels like this is supposed to be hard to sharpen. Well, as you can see, not that difficult. And there's one little trick I forgot to mention. If you're having troubles trying to figure out where on this blade that you're hitting, one of these, mark it. And now that it's black, when that disappears, of course, that's where you're taking metal off. And this won't clog any stone or buffing wheels or anything like that. And these are pretty cheap. That's a good way. Now, when you're planing on a surface, you can kind of use the same trick. Just take a pencil, and when they're properly set up, as you can see, this is cross-grained. And it does a pretty good job of smoothing. You can see the grain, so it wasn't too choppy, and most of these pencil marks are gone. But that concludes this series of videos on tools. What I would like to hear is comments from you folks, and I'll make another one and to fill in the details. As you can see, this is kind of a large field. I try to hit the fundamentals. I may have missed a few here and there. I do apologize, but if you'll let me know, I certainly will make another one. Thanks to Miss Heather and Miss Laura for standing there and putting up with all this. Thank you all, and please do email me with any questions.